Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Maul.
And this is our NFC episode. Pops is out of town, so we have his picks, of which I know we're going to make fun of him for at least one, and we'll get into that. But before we do, I told Maul about this yesterday. I was going to have Pops do it, but when he is out, it was just be Maul. Who's the first coach that you think is going to get fired this season? Because it's coming. Like, you know that someone's multiple are going to get fired. It's just a matter of who goes first.
Yeah, it happens every year. This one's always tricky because it's always the easy answer is just like who starts doing terrible, like who's just bad, right? But sometimes it's not that case. You know, sometimes it's teams that like you expect to do good, or you know, maybe we don't expect them to do good, but like the fan base or the owners or something thinks that they should be better, and that if they struggle is when they get fired. So that can kind of lead to like two separate, dichotomies of like just a bad team or like maybe a supposed to be good team. There's a couple that come to mind, and one of them I'll throw a little curveball at you. One I think would be the Saints head coach, just because again I just think they've kind of just been bad for a while. I thought they were going to win the division last year, and they were just kind of very meh. I think that's going to continue again. So I think that's an easy target. Another one, which kind of goes into the other, starts to kind of get into the other area, I think is Sean McDermott with the Bills. He's kind of already been on the hot seat a few separate times. They've just continued to make the playoffs because they have Josh Allen. And I wasn't on the AFC episode, but you saw with my picks that I had them finishing third and not even getting into the playoffs, which they've done recently, and primarily just because again they've had just okay teams. Their defense has been suspect at times, but I think they've lost all of their good weapons. Josh Allen is basically kind of out there by himself now, and I don't think that defense has gotten any better. So I think this is going to be a disappointing year for the Bills, and that's going to be where they start calling for his head. I think that's probably the most likely. So if I had to put odds on it, that'll be my answer. But the curveball that I want to throw at you, and this is always just fun to hate on the Cowboys, I'm going to say Mike McCarthy as well. Just because, just listen, and this is where it fully gets into the Cowboys have been like, this is our year, this is our year, this is our year. They're kind of already screwing the pooch, right? Like they all offseason, they've screwed it up. And this is not Mike McCarthy's fault necessarily that I know of, right? This is just Jerry Jones being like old and senile. And what's going to happen is they're not going to have CeeDee Lamb for the first couple weeks, and they're going to like pork it away and not going to be good. Jerry Jones is going to get mad and just do weird Jerry Jones things and like fire Mike McCarthy just because. They're also probably going to bring back CeeDee Lamb right around the same time and then like go back to being a decent Dallas Cowboys team. And essentially what they're going to do is like the most Cowboys things to do is just like return to that same mediocrity level, just without their starting, the head coach they started the year with. And that's going to kind of screw them up to make the playoffs and all that thing. So that's my curveball. But if you made me put money on it, I'm going to say McDermott with the Bills.
I can see that. I mean, McDermott, I agree with you from the standpoint of where the Bills have been, especially when you look last year, they sort of had the Chiefs on the ropes. Maybe if Stephon Diggs catches that pass, maybe they get 6. But, they do Buffalo things and shank a field goal that cost them, especially if, I think same as the Saints. You just see a team that can start off, either 0-3, 1-5, something like that, where the fans are like, dude, we've already missed out on a Super Bowl for the past few years. Like, enough.
Yeah, and Dennis Allen isn't like he's just kind of like, in my opinion, just like he's just there right now. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily his fault because the Saints, kind of put their eggs in the Derek Carr basket and haven't been really able to do anything with it. But like I don't think he's also helping. You know what I mean? Like he's not like the Antonio Pierce that are, they got guys excited about him kind of deal. He's just like, meh, he's white bread.
Well, speak of white bread, that's what the Saints fell into. It's like the second Drew Brees left, they were like, well, maybe Taysom Hill. And then they were like, yeah, that ain't going to work. And then they were like, well, maybe Jameis Winston. And then it was like, yeah, that ain't going to work. And then they're like, ooh, Derek Carr. It's like, how many mid guys can you go take? Like, before you know it, they're going to take Trevor Lawrence here soon. A little soon, but I had to throw that mid reference out for you.
Now they'll draft or they'll trade for Drake May since he's going to lose his starting job to Joe Milton.
They'll go get Mac Jones.
Gosh.
All right, so I'll give the option to you first of what division do you want to start with in the NFC?
Let's start with the South.
The South.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll give what Pops had first. So Pops had the Falcons, the Bucks, the Saints, and the Panthers. Now you were saying that you regretted not having more information behind your AFC picks. So I gave Pops the option to sort of explain himself that way. You know, it lays the foundation for why he picked it. He just said Kirk Cousins should sweep house. The Falcons had a chance last year, and the Bucks won out to win the division. The Saints are just bad 70% of the time and are still trying to find hope from the Drew Brees days, which I agree with. I'm not sure about you. I had the exact same order, and it's not about the Falcons being so much better. It's just the fact that division's terrible.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Same as the AFC, or at least how the AFC had been. It's like every year it seems like you go into the year and it's like that division's up for grabs. Like anybody can win it at any time. Minus the Panthers. But listen, I have it the same as well, but I could easily see like my 1 and 2 and the 3 and 4 both swapping. Like I could see the Bucks winning, the Falcons being second. I could see the Panthers getting third and the Saints being fourth. Like those are all high probabilities or possibilities in my mind. But I had it the same with Falcons, Bucks, Saints, Panthers, just because the Panthers have been so bad. They keep saying they're improved, but again, it's like, fool me once, you ain't gonna fool me again kind of deal. The Falcons clearly have the most talent out there. Bucks could probably make an argument for that, but some of their guys are a little bit older. I think there's a lot of hype going around with the Falcons right now, and they've got the weapons to do it. Those weapons have just been so mismanaged over the last few years. It just feels like, all right, they got new coaching, they got a new quarterback. Like there should be some excitement about what's going on in Atlanta this year.
I think one of the ways I like to sum up the South is because we were talking a few days ago, and then I got to thinking about it. I was like, oh, I'll bring this up. We play in that survivor pool where, and for people who are listening, what it is every single week you have to pick a new NFL team to win. And once you use them, you can't use them again. And there's a few weeks that are like 2 teams. You have to pick 2 winners. Like I think 5 out of the 17 weeks or 18 weeks of the season. But it's one of these ones that anytime you're like starting to look at like the Panthers or the Saints, especially those two, and I would argue sort of the Bucks as well and the Falcons, that especially going into this season not knowing what Kirk Cousins is going to do, like you sort of look at games and you're just like, yeah, they're playing the Titans. They should win this game.
Yeah, it feels like a 50-50 shot every game. You just flick that quarter and see what happens.
Unless it's like, because even the scarier ones is like, if you were to tell me, hey, the Giants are going to go play the Panthers, I'm just like, dude, I don't like Danny Dimes.
Yeah.
But I still ain't going to put money on the Panthers to win that game.
Dude, most games you're like, it's going to come down to quarterback play or defense. Those kinds of games, it's like, whose kicker is better? Because, I mean, they're going to barely hope that they get into field goal range, and whoever can make that last field goal is probably going to win it.
Yeah, I'd probably go with the Saints or the Giants in that case, just because I feel like at some point the owner of the Panthers, Tepper's going to like come out of the box and be like, all right, I'm calling plays. I've had enough of this.
He's going to let his wife call a play or something. It's going to
already letting her draft. My question for you with the Falcons is, what's your expectation for the Falcons? Like in terms of, I think it is unknown. I think that, yes, it's sort of like less hype because now that they went out and drafted Penix, I feel like it's taken away some of the steam from Cousins being there.
Yeah, I mean, who knows the reasoning behind that. We've talked about that kind of ad nauseum. I, I think, and I even said this in when we did that quarterback episode a long time ago. Kirk is a franchise QB. Period. Dot. In my mind, from how we defined it, he's nothing to ever really get super excited about. However, he's always done well. He's just always put up solid numbers. And for the Falcons to have even been close in that division a couple times these last few years and just had absolutely god awful quarterback play, that right there, that almost is like the Jets to me. Now, he's not Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, who knows what Aaron Rodgers is going to look like, right? But it's one of those like, dude, if you could just have had a quarterback to just complete some passes, that team could be so much better. And I feel like that's kind of what the Falcons are. They don't have as good of a defense, but again, being in the South, I feel like they're going to just be able to win enough games that where that's going to take them. Plus, I mean, Bijan was one of the most exciting guys to come out last year, and from like a fantasy perspective, anytime a rookie running back starts getting taken that high, like they've always had like monster years. Bijan was like the first exception because of how mismanaged they used him. And the coach and everybody's already come out and said, like, we're going to use this guy how he's supposed to be used. So that's exciting. The Kyle Pitts thing is like, again, who knows? But Drake London has been doing well. I mean, like, they have the weapons there. So it's setting up for them to do well and just win enough games that, again, I think they can easily take the South just because I think that division isn't going to have a ton of wins.
Kyle Pitts to me is becoming like the OBJ, especially in like fantasy. That like you always see him sitting there, you're like, I knew what he had like really early in his career, but then like after that point, it's one of these ones which I just saw like a clip of him dropping a pass like in practice, and it was like, nope, Kyle Pitts is still Kyle Pitts, even with Kirk Cousins. So he has immense talent, but it's one of those ones. Can all those guys like? I feel like with Drake London, and I know we've sort of talked about it before. It's like Cousins is leaving, going from Addison, Hawk, and Jefferson to now going to London and Bijan and Kyle Pitts. But it's like I think we know Bijan's very good. We've seen that like in glimpses. He just wasn't utilized right. But from London and Pitts, it's like I really don't know what you're gonna get. Like, are we gonna? I don't think you're gonna get the Jefferson out of Drake London. What do you get out of him? Do you get the old Adam Thielen? Like, what's the numbers that you're looking at? And that I still think this NFC South is bad enough that it doesn't really matter if he's like a superstar, but it will definitely matter when it comes time for the playoffs.
Yeah, see that, and that's like my point. Like, you're not getting the Jets or the Vikings as far as like the talent and stuff goes, but like it's good enough to like easily take that division, right? Like you take the Falcons and you put them in a different division, this is a different conversation, but they're in the NFC South, and it's just like they're not going to be the best in the NFC, but they should be the best in the South just because the rest of that division doesn't really, hold water.
Yeah. All right. That's the NFC South. What about the West?
This one, I have. You want to go with what Pops has, and then we can kind of compare.
Yep. Pops has the Niners first, then the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals.
Okay, so I have it the exact same, but I did really debate going back and forth between the Rams and the Niners. Not that I think that the Niners are worse. I have a feeling that the Rams are just going to be really strong this year. Like everything's telling me that the Rams are going to have. I mean, we've seen glimpses, and that's the only reason why I put him second. Is like we've seen these glimpses of like, man, the Rams are something to deal with. But then they also have these like, man, where did the Rams go? Kind of weeks. And I think they're still just going to have enough of those that the Niners are good, that it's going to make it tricky for them to kind of one up the Niners. Spoiler alert, I still do have the Rams making the playoffs because again, I think they're going to be right there with the Niners. But again, somebody's got to be first, somebody's got to be second. So I gave the nod to the Niners in that one.
I actually have the Rams.
Yeah.
First.
So there you go.
And it's For me, one, I do think the Rams will be really good. Like you'll have Stafford healthy, which he wasn't last year. Cooper Cup was hurt, and then it was like a balancing act of like Cooper was healthy, then Puka Nakua went down. Like having all of those guys healthy helps the Rams. Yes, they lose Aaron Donald, which is a huge piece. They drafted heavy defensive, and they had first round picks. So first time in like 6 years that they've had a first round pick. For me, I am sort of thinking that the Niners are going to fall off this year. And like they lose Eric Armstead to the Jags, who, yes, I know he's not a huge name on the defensive line, but he's still a really good player. They lose Chase. They still need help on the opposite side of Boza. You have the Greenlaw that's coming back from an Achilles tendon tear.
That's that sideline monster, dude. Got him.
Oh my gosh. And then I think even bigger on the offensive side is clearly the Niners are now like, at first they were like, no, we don't need Ayuk. And I think that after they drafted the kid out of Florida and they've got to see him for a few weeks, they're like, maybe we need Ayuk, because they had a deal on the table with the Steelers and chose to not do it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones where I think that, don't get me wrong, Christian McCaffrey is amazing and he'll carry that team. But you saw glimpses of it last year that like if you're just missing like one or two players off of that team, it's not the same team. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Niners suffer a little bit this year.
Yeah, so couple points on that. One, Purdy, right? Like Purdy is a bit. I don't think Purdy is amazing, but I think he gets a lot more hate than he deserves. Like I think he's game manager is a tough. It seems like it's like a dirty word nowadays. But when you have that talent on the Niners, like all they need is that game manager. You know what I mean? It's like, would they be better with Patrick Mahomes? Sure, every team would, but they don't need the Patrick Mahomes on that team because they have everybody else. It'll be interesting to see how Purdy develops. And I'm saying this kind of out of both sides of my mouth. I don't think Purdy is like the best player. He's like the eighth best player on the team, and he even knows it. However, I also think he's like the linchpin of, if he has bad games, and this is more of just like how crucial that quarterback spot is. If he has bad games, like we've seen it, where like the Niners can go on these runs where you're just like, ugh, they look bad. And it's usually because of Purdy, right? It's not because like Christian McCaffrey's playing any worse, because Christian McCaffrey's always playing well. So it'll be interesting to see how Purdy develops. I have to imagine with Kyle Shanahan that he's going to be fine, or they're going to figure out, even if they don't start out well, like Shanahan is one of the best like adapters in the game.
Until they get to the Super Bowl.
True. On the other side of that, Sean McVay is also like right in that same camp. And one guy that I think we're not talking about enough is Kyren Williams, dude. Like, I don't know why he just kind of like, everybody talks about Christian McCaffrey, and it's obvious why they talk about Christian McCaffrey. But outside of Kyren Williams getting hurt, like if you take away those games and then look at the rest of like he was putting up the same type of production as Christian McCaffrey. Like when you look at like the stats, and this is kind of more of a fantasy thing, but like it was like Christian McCaffrey, this huge gap, and then everybody else. And like Kyren Williams was kind of down here, but because he got hurt for like a good stretch of the season. If you take those out, though, I mean, he's like neck and neck with McCaffrey. He was the only one that was even close on like a games played basis, like putting up those same kinds of stats. And I think that's huge for the Rams, because the Rams, anytime they've had a good running back, Todd Gurley, they've been dangerous, right? Like, because they have those other weapons, and Kyren Williams coming back healthy, I think, is what makes them dangerous. And that's kind of why I was going back and forth. So I totally see your point on the Rams being able to out them.
The only thing I'll throw in as well, you summed it up good last night with the Cardinals. Just Kyler Murray's not a franchise quarterback. You got James Conner, who you said is, 40 years old by now, who's over the hill. Marvin Harrison, I think that I agree with you. I think he'll get a lot of the load. And so on fantasy, he'll look decent, but I
Yeah.
don't think he's like this difference maker coming into the organization that's going to be like, oh man, our offense now is like clicking. I don't see that happening. The Seahawks, on the other hand, are like the real wild card here because it's the first year without Pete Carroll. And so I'm sort of interested to see like where did the Seahawks go? Like I think Pete Carroll knew how to bring in coaching to like I will have a good defense. Seattle always had a good defense.
Yeah.
They've really struggled with Geno Smith. I think they have an immense talent in that offense in terms of you look at the wide receivers, you got Lockett, you got Smith the Jigba and Metcalf, and then you got Kenneth Walker at running back. On paper, you would sit back and go, man, the Seahawks should be competing. But it's funny that we all three of them are like, they're still finishing third in this division, mainly because I think you look at the position of quarterback and it's just,
Yeah,
I don't have
it's
any
just
faith in Geno.
yeah, it's hard to get excited about them. Like, are they going to win some games? Yeah, but they're also going to lose some games. Like, it's hard, to really get excited about what you think they're going to do.
Yeah. So now we got the East and the North. Well, since Pops has got the North, I'll save that one for last. So NFC East. Now I will give you a little statistic of division winners. There has not been a repeat in a while. So that to me was a big, I know I'm not like a superstitious person, but it's one of those ones that since 2004, no one has went back to back. Cowboys won it last year. Who do you got winning it this year?
Eagles. I mean, this one's easy for me. Like, especially if the Cowboys don't bring back CeeDee Lamb right away. I mean, good luck, dude. Like, they've got. I mean, what do they got? Like
They have
Dak.
everyone.
I'm just.
I meant the Eagles. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the Eagles are going to be the team to beat in the NFC for me. Like they were like this last year, and I think there was just a weird overhype that they weren't able to live up to. But in my mind, like they just got better, right? And I think losing last year or not doing well last year is going to kind of have that fire in them where they're going to come out and they're going to be that Eagles from like a couple years ago that they went to the Super Bowl. Like this one wasn't even a question for me who was winning that one, and especially if the Cowboys screw up the CeeDee Lamb thing, like I could see them falling behind like the Commanders even. But I have the Eagles first, the Cowboys second, just because again I don't know about Jaden Daniels, and the Commanders haven't really been anything special. I think the Giants are just going to be competing for the Carolina Panthers at the bottom. But yeah, it's head and shoulders the Eagles, and then the middle two are just kind of whatever.
Pops did bring up a good point. He ranked the same. He had Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, and then Giants. He was like, he did say it, yes, he has the Cowboys number 2, but he was like, I would not be surprised, which I think a lot of it is going to hinge on Jaden Daniels. Dan Quinn knows the Cowboys. From a defensive standpoint, like me and you were talking about it, like the Commanders have defensive guys, especially like when you look at from just a personnel standpoint. The Commanders should, on paper, have a very good defense. I think they will have a very good defense this year. Dan Quinn took a Cowboys team that was really sort of poor in defense and made them good. Now, yes, did they get just smacked by the Packers last year? 100%. Overall, that team played a lot better. I see that happening for the Commanders, but it's really just about how much does Jaden Daniels progress year one.
Yeah, he has, and I saw this thing, and it kind of got me thinking. He has like RG3 vibes written all over it, which you hope he gets through his rookie season because he's got the talent, and you're like, ooh, I could see them doing well because he's got Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin. Who's that other wide receiver they got? I think they just traded Jahan Dotson.
They did to the Eagles.
Yeah, there you go. Eagles got even better there, but still, like they've got the talent around him, and I've seen Jaden Daniels at least in the preseason has looked like he's at game speed. Which when RG3 was there, he I think he won Rookie of the Year, didn't he?
I have to look. That's a good question.
I'm pretty sure he did. I mean, so it's they've got the pieces, maybe not to beat the Eagles, but I could easily see them being better than the Cowboys when it comes down to it, especially if their defense improves. And then again, this is more just like the Cowboys don't have anybody. Like if they screw up the CeeDee Lamb thing, who's their running backs? Like they've got nothing. And like Dak has not been the same ever since he got hurt. So like he's not going to be the guy that's just like putting the team on his back. They're in trouble, honestly. Like the Cowboys fans got to be nervous about what's going on.
RG3 was offensive rookie of the year, his rookie year.
Yeah.
I sit back with Dak and that whole team. It's the same thing that's happened with the Panthers. It's just been around for 20 years and no one. Is Jerry an incredible owner from just an owner perspective? Yeah, I can't argue that. Like he's built a brand
from
like,
a business perspective.
Yeah. Like I'm not talking football. I'm just like from a pure, I own the team. Like you have the owner of the Bengals who it's like can't build a practice facility. This guy like built the Star. He built this huge stadium. Like he really, I think, sort of changed stadiums. Like he made it to where it's like, hey, if you want fans, the stadium needs to be legit. Like you need to have people are not just coming from the game, they're coming for all this other stuff. And hey, we're going to put a 80-yard television up here for the upper deck fans. And I told you a long time ago, I've sat 4 rows from the field and I had to like make myself stare at the field to not just like stare up at the game the whole time because it's incredible. But from an owner, like from a general manager perspective, it's like he got one trade right. He traded Herschel Walker to the Vikings, and he got a slew of draft picks that they turned into, Michael Irvin and multiple other players that ended up winning them Super Bowls. But then people forget. It's like, why did Jimmy Johnson leave? Because he couldn't get along with Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
And you hear multiple Cowboy players talk about, like, if we had kept Jimmy Johnson, the Cowboys probably win a few more, like multiple. But they don't. And no one sits back and goes, that's Jerry's fault. Jerry sucks as an owner. And it's like for the past 25 years, people just like put up with the fact that it's like, well, we got a new stadium. Oh, we get this stuff. We just never going to win a Super Bowl. And they always blame it on the players. I feel like no one, especially in the media, ever looks and they're like, Jerry, sit down and shut up. Like, stop making decisions. Like, you're not making good ones anymore. That's why everyone hates on the Cowboys.
I mean, it's his coaching decisions too, right? Like he keeps bringing in coaches. I think specifically guys that like he knows won't fight him, like guys that like Mike McCarthy, like Jason Garrett, like guys that don't really have this like identity of like I'm gonna run the team my way, and
that's why I hated Parcells.
Yeah, like you know what I mean. Like if he doesn't like that, he wants to run the thing, and he's just gonna put whatever schmuck on the sideline that will do what he wants to do, and he doesn't care because he's making money, running a business.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully they finish dead last at it because the Giants are in the division, but you never know. All right, NFC North. Who do you have winning the division?
I've got the Packers winning the division, which I think is probably a surprise and maybe different than both of you guys. And this was I think if you remember, after the Super Bowl last year, we did that like way too early prediction, and I had the Packers and Jets going to the Super Bowl next year. And I'm kind of sticking to it. I was close, right? Like I almost had the Jets beating the Chiefs, but at some point you gotta just call a spade. But I still do think the Packers are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and we saw it. If they play like they did in the playoffs last year, which I imagine they've just only gotten better, they're going to be tough to deal with.
So do you have Lions finish second?
I do have the Lions finishing second, and we kind of talked about how it's easy when you're like that up and coming or nobody really expects it from the Lions. But once you've proven like, hey, dude, they should have been in the Super Bowl last year, now you got a target on your back. So like people are going to be prepared for the Lions. Hopefully Dan Campbell has matured just a little bit, not too much, right? Because he is his own best friend, but also his own worst enemy as far as kind of the things that he does. So I think the North is like probably the going to be the most competitive division when it comes to like you got three pretty decent teams there. The Bears are a little bit of a question mark, but from again on paper, like everybody's expecting those three teams to be really good this year.
I agree. I'm the same. So Pops had the Lions, the Packers, the Bears, and the Vikings. I'm the same with you. I have the Packers winning the divisions, the Lions second, Bears third, Vikings fourth. I feel
Okay.
like all of us realize the Vikings or Sam Darnold's going to be seeing some ghosts. JJ McCarthy saw enough that he just called out for the rest of the year. So the Vikings, I just don't see. Will they win some games? Yeah. Do I think they're going to be competitive? No. I really feel what Pop said in the text about the Lions. That's like my biggest thing on the Lions is he talked about a little bit of golf's regression, which I think we saw in some games. Like you saw when they got like smacked by the Ravens.
Yeah.
Like there's something about when they get up and they have the lead, unless it was against San Francisco, they typically won the game. But then the bigger thing is their secondary, and that's where my biggest heartburn comes from. I get they went out and addressed it in the draft, but like finding a corner in the NFL draft is much like drafting a first round quarterback.
Yeah.
Like it is a dime a dozen. Like you just don't know what you're going to get. And in that division, now that they have Caleb Williams and Jordan Love that you got to compete against, I sit back and I go, dude, it's not last year where it's like, hey, you're having to play against Justin Fields. You're having to play, I forget who the Vikings backup quarterback was. It was
Josh Dobbs for a while.
And then it was somebody else. And it was like Jordan Love. It was his first year as a starter. He was sort of going up and he built as they went through the season, but it was one of those ones where it's like now Love's going to be coming out swinging. Caleb Williams, dude, you weren't on it last week. Maybe me and Pops talked about it after. Dude, that run over to the left sideline where he like turned and just put it on Rome on a dime, you're just like, dude, that's exactly what we thought he was.
Yeah, we've been talking about that, for the last year, just because he's that guy. We've seen that,
and it makes me even madder when I like see them like talk about Drake May. I'm like, what are we talking about? That dude, terrible. So it will be interesting for me to see the regression of the Lions, because I think a lot of things, like I agree with you, Campbell. It's like you want him to still be aggressive, but at the same time, it's like, hey, where is that going to show up? Like clearly he knows that, hey, maybe if I kicked those field goals last year, maybe we're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
How does that play into this year? It'll be interesting, especially in the tighter games. So from that, I'll give you Pop's top 7 teams for the playoffs, and then I'll ask for yours, and then we'll go through mine. So Pops, his number 1 seed in the playoffs, which for me is surprising, was the 49ers, just because it's I maybe it's more of just my internal bias against the 49ers. It's more surprising to see them be number 1 again. Then he's got the Eagles number 2, Lions 3rd, Falcons 4th, the division winners. Then he's got the Packers at 5. He has the Bears making the playoffs at 6, and then the Rams finishing at 7th. So the playoff games, you'd have the 49ers on a bye. You have the Eagles playing the Rams, the Lions playing the Bears, and then the Falcons playing the Packers. So out of you, who are your 7 teams that you got going in?
So not too different. It's pretty similar to what he's got. I've got the Eagles number 1. Again, I've kind of explained, like I think they, talent wise, like they're just going to be the force to be reckoned with. I do have the Niners at 2, and I debated going back and forth between the Niners and the Packers. So I have the Packers at 3, but again, that one was close as far as flip flop goes. Primarily, why I gave the Niners the edge there is just, and we kind of already talked about it, I just think the North is a tougher division. So the Niners are going to have a few more wins just because they're going to get to play the Seahawks and the Cardinals twice, as opposed to having to play the Lions and the Bears twice. I think those could get split very easily, where I think the Niners are essentially just getting 4 free wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got the Packers 3rd and the Falcons 4th. Those are my division winners. But then I got the Lions 5, and the Rams 6, which again I thought was like a very close, like could go either way because I could easily see the Rams like winning that division. So it's hard to make a name for why they're sixth. But so Lions 5, Rams 6, and then I do have the Bears 7th. And I was kind of going back and forth, and you're like, man, like I was looking at schedules and going, Cowboys versus Bears. But anytime you get a chance to knock the Cowboys out of the playoffs before it even starts, dude, I'm taking that every day of the week. So Bears are going to take the 7th spot, and the Cowboys get left out.
So for me, same as you, I got the Eagles 1, I got the Packers 2, I got the Rams at number 3, and then the Falcons at 4. At 5, I have the Lions. At 6, I do have the Cowboys in because it wouldn't be an NFL season without the Cowboys losing in the opening round of the playoffs. That's just me. That's my level of petty. Is I want them to get in just for them to lose again.
Just for them to choke in the playoffs? Yeah, yes. It's a tradition.
That's what I love. There's nothing better than I think I said it last year, but I was on a layover and dude, I literally walked into the bar that had all these TVs on, and I literally sat down. I ordered some wings, and the very next play, Dak threw a pick six, and there was like one Cowboys fan in there, and everyone at the bar is just like, "This is the best game of our lives." So there's nothing better than watching them get beat. And then I have the Niners at 7th.
Wow. Okay.
So like I said, I sense some regression out of the Niners where I think that they're in the playoffs, but at the same time, it's just you don't know what you're going to get out of them. So from there, Pops just go into the matchups. Eagles Rams, he has the Eagles taking that one. Lions Bears, he has the Bears beating the Lions in the playoffs. And then
of course he does.
And then Falcons against the Packers, and this is the real surprising one to me. He's got the Falcons beating the Packers.
Wow.
I don't see that happening.
No, I don't either.
I'm not sure about you. We have the same matchup with the Falcons playing the Lions. I've got the Lions win that game.
I have the Lions winning that game as well.
Just because I can get behind Kirk Cousins winning the division, but it goes back to what you said. If you were to put the Falcons and really any of these other divisions, I really feel like they're playing for third at best.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
It's just a tougher divisions. They're very fortunate they're playing in the South, and I think that will show up in the playoffs. The Benz is just right up the street, and it's like it's not that type of stadium that it's like, hey, this is a home field. Like it is when Georgia plays there, but it's not for the Falcons.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's just it hasn't been since Michael Vick played there. But even like when Michael Vick played there, I don't feel like Falcons fans were out in force. Like it was just It's never been that type of stadium for opposing teams. So which leaves him going into the divisional round of the 49ers playing the Bears and the Eagles playing the Falcons. So I know you got the Lions winning. Who do you have? Niners versus Bears.
Yeah, so I got Niners versus Bears. I think the Niners are going to win. And then I've got the Packers versus the Rams. And this one was real tough. Like I sat on this one for a while. Ultimately, I gave it to the Packers.
So with that, you'll have the Eagles playing the Lions and the Niners playing the Packers, which will be must-watch TV.
Which, yeah, that was kind of when it was just like, man, you got it's like you said with the Cowboys playing, choking in the first round. Like if the Niners and the Packers aren't playing at some point in the playoffs, like something went awry, right? So it's different names and different players, but I think also different outcomes. So I got the Eagles beating the Lions, and then I got the Packers beating the Niners. So my NFC championship is Eagles-Packers.
Eagles-Packers. All right. So my playoffs, I got the Falcons losing to the Lions. I've got the Rams beating the Cowboys because, like I said, it wouldn't be an NFL postseason without the Cowboys going out in the first round. And then for me, I have the Packers playing the Niners right off the get-go at Lambeau. I think this is the big difference. I got the Packers beating the Niners to set up, which is funny. We have pretty eerily similar takes. I got Eagles versus the Lions and then Packers versus the Rams. of which I've got the same. We literally, I can't make this up. We have not talked. I have the exact same NFC championship of Eagles Packers. Pops, on the other hand, he had the Packers, getting beat by the Falcons up front. So his NFC championship, he's got the Niners beating the Bears and the Eagles beating the Falcons to make it yet again an Eagles Niners contest. He's got the Eagles winning that game. So from you, you had Jets Packers. Do you have still the upset?
I don't. This is where I think it just becomes a little bit too much for Jordan Love. I just think the Eagles are just too strong all the way around. I said this last year too, and they let me down. I specifically remember talking about at the beginning of last season just how what a monster that Eagles roster is, and it's the same, if not better, this year. So I've got to give it to the Eagles. I do think the Eagles are going to take it.
I've got the Eagles in it as well. Here's why. You talk about the monster of a roster, and I'm sure you're going to echo. I have to give you the credit for this because this point was something you referenced last year with a totally different team, but it's spot on. When Saquon was healthy, he won games for the Giants. Like, with Saquon, without Saquon, that was a totally different team. And you could tell it. Like, is Jalen Hurts better than Danny Dimes? I will give you that. That team last year really didn't. I especially felt like for the first 6 weeks of the season, it was like, well, 1 week it was DeAndre Swift, then it was someone else. It was like they just could not commit to a running back. And I feel like it cost them because it was like no one could get into rhythm. There's no question about who's running the
Yeah,
ball.
it felt like they didn't have a great identity last year. It was like they knew they had talent, but they didn't really just know what to do with any of it. I think they changed the scheme for Jalen as far as running the ball versus throwing the ball because, they were maybe trying to protect him. It just seemed like they didn't quite fully know how to utilize everything they had.
Yeah, 100%. And you look at the rest of the roster now. They went out, they traded for Dotson from the Commanders, which he was a first round pick. He hasn't performed to the level of a first round pick, but he's not going to be expected to be a 1 or 2. He's going to be a number 3.
Yeah, listen, dude. That's a great point. I mean, he's not gonna be your just Justin Jefferson, right? He's not that guy. But when you gotta double team AJ Brown and then oh gosh, Devontae Smith's on the other side, and then you got him in the slot, dude. I think he might be one of those secret little Tyler Lockett weapons where he's just gonna shred people, kind of unbeknownst. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are going to get all the headlines. Saquon's going to get all the headlines and maybe put up all the points. But when you look at the box score at the end of the day, he's going to be a huge difference maker in the getting you those first downs or those clutch catches and runs, on a 3rd and 12 and they throw a slip screen to that dude or something and it gets you that first down that keeps drives alive. He's going to be that guy, I think, for the Eagles that goes a long way that maybe doesn't necessarily show up on the box score or the headlines.
And they have Dallas Goedert at tight end.
Yeah.
For me, I was waiting for us to get on this hype train with the Eagles because I had already said in the AFC episode, I think Doug Peterson's the first one to go. This is sort of my wild card. If the Eagles struggle at all, Nick Sirianni is on the hottest of hot seats.
Yeah, and that's a great point with what I was talking about earlier. It was one of those good teams that just doesn't perform to their standard. Yeah, if you can't win with these teams, dude, these rosters that you have, you're doing something wrong.
100%. And the only reason that I have the Eagles beating the Packers is this goes back to the Packers not putting talent around Jordan Love at the wide receiver position. Not saying that the guys that they have aren't talented. It's more just there's a clear difference between the Packers wide receiver room and the Eagles wide receiver room. I'm sorry, but corners are hard to find. There's Patrick Surtain, there's Sauce Gardner. There may be 1 or 2 other guys in the league that I just have mentioned, like Stingley, who is okay with the Texans, but overall, they're tough to find. The idea that the Packers are going to be able to lock up that offense, and then it's hey, even if you're covering our wide receivers, it's we're handing the ball off to Saquon. Good luck.
Or we're going to fake it to Saquon, and then Jalen Hurts is going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to see how the tush push develops. Without Kelsey, And I'm interested to see if they run it as frequently and as successfully as they did last year.
That's very true. I mean, Kelsey being gone, having a center is
He's irreplaceable. Yeah,
yes,
that's one of the just irreplaceable. It's not going to happen.
correct. So the best that they can do is hope to mitigate it the best they can and just have a player that's not a liability, that isn't as good of a standout. But I sit back and go tush push. It's like, dude, I got Saquon. A zone that's for me, this is like what we talk about the Ravens on the previous episode of like Henry and Lamar, and it's like, I don't see Henry as that like zone read option type of running back. That's not who Henry is. This could not fit any better for the Eagles than it's like, oh, you want to collapse on the back? Well, then Jalen's going to run. Oh, you want to watch the quarterback? Well, Saquon's gone. It's like, and I sent you guys that clip of Saquon putting that dude in the dirt on that juke move, and then like Devontae and AJ Brown are like staring at one another, like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah, I just watched some highlight this morning before we did this about it was like Saquon was out in New York like fighting for survival, and he catches like this little swing out of the backfield and like ducks his shoulder on one dude, puts him in the dirt as he's like spinning off this other guy, like grown man slams this other dude into the ground and then like jukes another dude with a spin, and you're just like, goodness gracious, like my man was out there playing 1v11 and making the Giants relevant, and now he's on this like amazing roster surrounded. I mean, like he could easily be like the top rusher, top fantasy, everything this year, just because he's got that talent, and now he's got this amazing roster around him.
so what's nuts is I wish this is what happens when you have three people that think alike. We all have the same Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah.
We all have Chiefs Eagles. Now, Pops, I sent him a text. He did not give his pick. So, my question to you: do the Chiefs three-peat, or do the Eagles find a way?
Look, it's one of those, and I think the Chiefs are just. It's like, how do you bet against them, right? Like, you make me put money on this game. You cannot pick against the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce on that team. They are the biggest threat we've ever seen. Also, just know that there's a reason we've never had a three-peat Super Bowl winner. And like Patrick himself has even said it, like the opportunity to win Super Bowls in the NFL is small. You know what I mean? Like you usually can only keep some type of roster together long enough, just, contracts, age, all those different variables. Like it's usually a very small window. So it's very difficult to have continued success. I think we've kind of been spoiled with like the Patriots because of how relevant they were. And the Chiefs have kind of just filled that role. However, the Patriots didn't win every year. It seemed like it did. They feel like they did. And I have the Chiefs getting back there, but I do think the Eagles are going to pull it out just from like it's just too hard to win 3 Super Bowls. Like there's just a reason why it doesn't happen at the professional level.
All right. So you got for me, I just can't pick against the Chiefs, especially with I get it's preseason. It's funny because Holly is always just like, you not gonna watch the game? And I was like, babe, I watched the opening 2 series and now it's just trash.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing to watch.
Dude, pause for a second. Like your Taco Bell comment from like 2 years ago is still like one of the greatest, truest things that like anybody has ever spoke, where you're just like, ooh, it's back, baby. I can't wait. And then you watch it and you're like, maybe I didn't miss it as much as I thought I did. Like, it's just so true, dude.
2 bites into a chalupa, you're instantly like, nah, this was not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I can only watch Justin Fields fumble a snap so many times, and I'm just like, turn this game off. This makes me sick. Just like Taco Bell.
But from the preseason, it's clear that like Xavier Worthy's a problem speed-wise. Like, and if they can have Hollywood, him, and Kelsey all in the field with Pacheco. And then they had some little kid last night that was just stiff arming Bears players into the 7th level of hell. It was like
that running back,
yeah,
the white dude.
yeah, with
Yeah,
the
Steele.
yeah,
His name's Steele. Something Steele.
yeah, just dropping Bears.
Yeah.
I almost text Pops and I was like, dude, you just got a white dude just shoving you guys into the ground. Like, Bears are done. Like, I didn't know this was
There
Mike
goes your
Allstott
playoffs.
reborn. But it's impossible to bet against Mahomes. That's like the biggest issue. We can why did the Patriots do so well? They had Brady. Like, it's clear that the second he left and went down to the Buccaneers and then immediately won a Super Bowl, that everyone's like, oh, I guess it was Belichick.
Yeah,
Like,
I was that guy.
it was that guy. That now I sit back and I go, it's great for him that Kelsey has been willing to not take as much as he could get in order to keep on the team. The fact that Andy Reid, we sort of talked about last year, like, especially if he wins this, like I have heard some guys say it, if he wins 3 straight, I would argue there is more than enough of an argument that you could start looking at him versus Belichick and being like, we got to have, a conversation. I get he hasn't won as many as Belichick, but like you said, no one's ever won 3 straight.
Yeah.
There's only been one team that I know of that's been to this many in a row. They never won one. Bills went to 4 straight and lost them all. Like, and really, it's if they didn't play against Tom Brady, Mahomes is about to play for his 5th. He's already would have won 4 by now.
Yeah.
Like, and possibly going for 3 in a row and be his 5th. It's just tough. Like, if they can keep, as long as injuries don't derail them, which is sort of me and Pop said that last week, is a lot of this is just based upon you just don't know who's going to go down.
Never know.
And that it changes, just like with the Browns last year with Chubb. It's like, if they had had Chubb there at the end, I'm like, the Browns team would have been dangerous. Like, but they didn't. So you just don't know what would have happened. But Pops never texts back. I'm going to guess, if I had to bet, that Pops has the Chiefs going 3-peat.
That would be my guess for what Pops has as well.
I'll let him defend himself and give his voice for the Eagles on the next episode if he chooses not to. Outside of that, you got anything else?
Nope. It's a great episode.
All right. Well, thanks for the predictions. We'll see how wrong we were here in week 1 as everyone gets hurt. All right. So thanks for tuning in. Time Pull Chalks. We'll see you guys later.